morning, sunshines. All right, we're getting close. You turned in your Project A. Again, the thing that would be different than what you just did in a real light plot is that you would clean it up. You would take a little template or put it on a computer and actually draw the things correctly using the template and using the right template for an ellipsoidal or for Fresnel. That sort of stuff. But again, if you've just used a rough plot, which is what you produced, you need to do that first. I do those first before I do the final plot, because that way I can make sure the inventory is correct and all those sort of things. So again, if you're into this lighting design stuff, learning to draft is pretty easy, especially nowadays with computer drafting. But conceptually, that's the important thing for me in this class, is that you learn that. And we also don't have enough computers for everybody, so there you go. Anyway, there are 4 phases of rehearsal. The first phase is development of the production concept, which is the style you're going to do the play in. We're talking about Death of a Salesman, and so I'm going to say the dominant style is expressionistic. Yes. Again, you could have an impressionistic, you could have a realistic, you could have a lot of different ways. There are realistic elements certainly in the play. There are real beds, there's real tables, there's real refrigerator, right? But overall, it's an impressionistic version of life. The analysis of other production of elements, like practicals again for the refrigerator, for the sconces on the wall, where can you add light to help light in the boys' bedroom to help focus, that sort of stuff. You want to create a lighting score. We're going to talk about a little bit here are the cues in the show. I'm going to go through like the first dozen or so cues in the show to show you where the cues would go. And then what we're doing is implementing. We're going to remember the 7 steps in the process. We've done we've decided to do the show. We've done the analysis, we've done the research, we've incubated, thought about it. We've made our selection and the plot that you just gave me. The next step is the incorporation or implementation of the cues, writing the cues in the show. Now, in this class, you don't get to do that because we don't actually have a show. But if you would like to, that's the point of this class. You now know everything up until actually turning the lights on. And so if you're interested in doing lights for a show at AUM, please let me know. And it's much easier to learn by doing than any other way out there. And I will be behind you 100%, so don't feel like you're on your own. But if you'd like to design lights for a show, let me know and we'll work it out. Here's a little video about the employment opportunities as a lighting technician. Enjoy.
If you're interested in creative, physical work in the arts, lighting technician may be an occupation to consider. Lighting technicians take various lighting fixtures, light modifiers, and associated electrical and rigging equipment and control them in various ways to create different lighting effects. We asked a lighting technician to illuminate this interesting occupation for us.
My name is Scott George Lafleur. I'm a lighting technician here at the Citadel Theatre. Generally, what I do is basically either the setup of lights, the focusing of the lights for the different shows that we have here. Generally, it's usually about a 3-week process to get us set up for the show. Basically, we have a designer tell us what kind of lights they want to use, what degrees of lights, what kind of gels, what kind of gobos, and then we usually try to prep as much of that as possible. Also in that prep period is any practicals, so any elements that require a flickering light and a lantern, for example, lights that are built into the stage, so like housing lights, if the set's a house. We receive a plot, which is basically a giant piece of paper that looks like the stage with all the electrics and all the pipes on it so that we know where the lights get hung. So once we have that kind of initial setup, then we go into a focus. We'll focus all the lights throughout the rig. And then basically after that, we kind of go into a tech rehearsal mode where we record all the cues. So that's establishing the look of the stage. We record it into our console. You just kind of go through and build the entire show. Then once the show is built, they do on-stage rehearsals and we do tweaks to change the lights, the different intensities of the lights that the designer can get the desired look. And then basically we're in show mode. So show schedules are really tight. We're usually Tuesday through Sunday, 6 p.m. till about 11, and on Thursdays and Sundays there's two shows, with a maintenance period of 4 hours somewhere in that week. A lighting technician can work in a theater, which involves mostly stage fixed degree lighting. They can work in rock show concerts where there's a lot of moving lights, smokes, pyro, stuff like that. And they can also kind of do more operatic where it's a little bit, there's a lot of mixed elements. So there's video, there's lights, there's different types of effects in order to create exactly what the look that the designer's looking for. At the Citadel, the environment in which I work in is a pretty friendly one because we're all trying to get to the same goal. We're very cooperative. It's very team-driven. Sometimes people will have their priorities, so sometimes you'll have to juggle around which is more important in terms of getting it done right now. But we'll usually work together. Typically, there's about, on the hang days, on the days that are really, really intense, there's usually about 3 to 4 people. It can get anywhere up to about 7 people that you're working with in a regular day. And then that's just electrics department. There's also stage carpentry, there's props, there's scenic carpentry, there's so many other departments, and you all really need to get everyone in line in terms of what the goal is that day, and so that it can all be accomplished within a timely manner. Some of the most common tools here that we use at the Citadel is a crescent wrench, which is a pretty basic tool, but it serves a multitude of needs. Some of the other equipment that we use is fall arrest harness. Because we're in a building that requires fall arrest, some areas are actually locked off in terms of you can't actually go out there without the fall arrest system. One of the best personalities for this occupation would be someone who's imaginative, works well with others, someone who's open to criticism but can use that to make something better. The end result in every technician's job is basically to create a better product. Theater programs at post-secondary education usually teach us skills like sewing, they'll teach you prop making, carpentry skills, electric skills. They offer a wide range of different skills that you can take, and you kind of require a little bit of knowledge in every single one in order to make your job a little bit more aware. If someone's interested in this field, in the lighting technician field, I definitely suggest there's a lot of theaters around town that take volunteers, so you can go and get some education that way and get some training, get to know some people and get to know the community. At the Citadel, usually if you're the low man on the totem pole, you'd come in as a permit. You'd get some hours under your belt and get to know the people that you're working with. And eventually you'd work up to the point where you're a little bit more regular. And once you have the skills, like you need to be a board operator, or you need to have a particular skill set in order to kind of progress through the industry. You might get the opportunity to run a show. Then after running a show, you might continue to get a hired vice or a contract. And then typically that would carry you through. With my job requirements, the way that they are, the time that I do have, my personal time, I try to fill it with things that make me happy, try to do some things that get me out of the house. So I've incorporated archery a couple years ago. I don't do any hunting, but it's all just paper shooting, and if it kind of is a nice kind of relaxing zen about it. I also do a lot of work with computers, so that kind of takes up my time, and you know, it's about finding the things that make you happy. My job's pretty satisfying, actually. It's to see the amount of people that come in to see a show every single night. It really helps. You don't quite get the amount of recognition as an actor does, but an actor's putting their face out, and I'm not. I'm working behind the scenes, and you know, it's just good to kind of get the community out and see how many people are actually interested in theater. So I'm pretty happy with the career choice that I've made.
Again, you can see that he's mostly in Canada, but the rules are still the same in America. I would still say going to your local community theater and just volunteering is the best way in the door. We're going to real quickly show you how to cue a show. Yes? Here's just a quick video on how to use an ETC board in case you weren't around when we walked through the theater a couple months ago.
Let's look at how to play through our cues. We want to make sure we're in live, and we're going to start at the top of our cue list. So we are going to say go to cue, out, enter. This will clear our stage and put Q1 into pending. Here on our master playback fader pair, I'm going to press our big go button down here at the bottom. That's going to go into Q1. On our PSD, you'll see that while a cue is running, it's in red, and then once it's completed, it turns gold. Down at the bottom of our PSD, along with right above our master fader pair, you can also see the cue we're sitting in currently, which is Q1, it's in gold. And the cue in pending, or our next cue, is right next to it there, Q2 in this case. If I need to stop a cue mid-transition, I can use our stop back button. So here I'm going to press go onto Q2, and before it's complete, I'm going to press our stop back button, which is the button above our go button. This pauses the cue transition and gives me two options. I can either press the go button to continue that fade into Q2, or I can press the stop back button again to back up into Q1. In this instance, I'm going to press go again to continue on. Let's demonstrate going back from mid cue. So if I press go into Q3 and I need to stop, from here I can press back and it will back up into Q2. It's worth noting that going backwards through the cue list uses our default back time. It does not use the timing of the cue. If I'm in a complete cue, such as Q2 right now, and I press our back button, it will simply go backwards to Q1. I also have the option to manually control the timing from cue to cue. If I want to do that, I need to lower our master fader pair. I can press my go button. In the master playback status display below our cue lists, you'll notice it says man in red right now. That stands for manual. Now I'm able to raise that fader pair and it will go into Q2 using this timing. As a general rule, it's good to make sure that your master fader pair is up before beginning a show.
All right, so where do the cues go? Yes? So we're gonna talk about Death of a Salesman. Again, this is my cues. Your cues may vary, but just to show you how you would go about setting up cues, the first cue in the show is what I'm gonna call the preset. In our theater, we don't have a grand drape. And so when you walk into the space, you're gonna see the space in some form. And so just having some sort of light, ambient light, maybe having a sunrise on the cityscape upstage, having a little light on the bed, because that's gonna be important, having a little light on the refrigerator, because that might be important, having a little light on the boys' bedrooms upstairs, just to separate that, a little glow and those sort of things, so people can sort of see, but not light enough that you're overpowering anything. And you might introduce the dream color, I'm gonna call it lavender, my dream color for the show, just to give you that sense and feel of the show, just as a preset. Yes. Then again, sound cue and would be going. Then you'd have music of the period playing, the 40s, if that's when we're setting it. And then the light cue 2 would be when the house lights went to half. Again, in the preset, you have your house lights at full, whatever full is. Full may be full or maybe 50, depending on how bright the house lights are. But you have your house lights at full in the preset. You take them to half so the audience knows that things are about to start happening. And then in our theater, we generally have a person, Katie, come down and welcome people to the theater and explain the exits and all that sort of stuff. So you have to have a light for Katie. Yes, a welcome light. Then that light goes out and turns us back to the house to half cue. And the reason I do that, it could go straight to blackout, but the reason I put the house to half cue is that I have learned over time that a lot of people like showing up a little late. And so if Katie starts her speech at 7:30 and it takes till 2-3 minutes, by 7:32, 7:33, we typically have a good 5-10 people walking in the door. And so I would rather wait in the house to half cue so that they can see to sit down rather than starting the show with those people that are at the box office, yes? But once Katie has given the stage manager permission to go with the show, then that would be light cue 5, which in this case goes to black, so that Willie can walk out in the black light, not light, in the black, and hit his spike. Now, again, you're probably gonna need a little piece of glow tape so that Willie can stand on the stage at the right point. And then the whole image that I've had from way back, the downlight on Willie with his luggage to begin the show, again, if the director doesn't direct that, that's not there. But in my mind, that light cue is gonna be there. That's the Willie downlight cue, yes? And then as Willie moves toward the stage, I would create a look of evening in the house. And then when Willie walks into the house, I would have him turn a switch which would create a practical cue of the light coming on in the kitchen. And then he's going to go and talk to Linda in the bedroom. Now, there's nothing that indicates in the script that when he goes to talk to Linda, he does anything about turning the light off in the kitchen, and he's gonna go back to the kitchen to make his cheese sandwich later. And so I don't mind leaving the practical light, whatever that may be, in the kitchen on. He goes to the bedroom, and so whatever the practical light is that has created that look, I wanna make sure that, hey, the window light gobo that says the bedroom, is the marital bedroom, and not the bed that they're sleeping in at the hotel is on. So we have that for Linda to be seen in. He sits at the edge of the bed. She says, "Let me go get some aspirin." He stops her. He starts rubbing her feet. Then at one point, he goes to the bathroom and turns on a practical light. Now again, we may not see the actual light bulb that is the practical, but we need to have the effect of the light coming on in the bathroom. Yes. Then he comes out of the bathroom. He comes back. They have more conversation. As they filter into the kitchen, the boys wake up upstairs. Happy wakes up. Again, I would have initially just an ambient change so that we can see Happy a little better. And then as he says, "Hey Biff, Dad's home," if there is, and I have put a lamp in the bedroom, so that would be to me when Happy would turn on that practical. And so there's a light cue that just brings up enough light brighter upstairs so you can see the two boys waking up. But then there's another light that's a quick change where he turns the light on upstairs. And then at one point, Willie starts dreaming and listening to music. I would have the dream light, I think it's light cue, let's see here. I may have put that in the wrong order as I was talking to you there. Light cue 10, let's see about 10. Where's 10? Nope. I'm in the right sequence. Light cue 12. Light cue 12, you see the flute is heard, sound cue C. That's the dream light. That's, again, the flute isn't real, the flute's in Willie's head. And so introducing the color of the dream light in light cue 12 is just a slow fade. I wouldn't say it gets the brightest it ever gets, it should just be a little introduction to color. Just a hint, and whenever we hear that music, we're in some place different than we are in the reality without the flute. Then when the boys start talking and Willie is just downstairs making sandwiches, eating at the kitchen table, again, I would lower all those lights, not necessarily lose the practical down in the kitchen, but at least lower the intensity of the area light, and then pull the area light upstairs where the boys are in Q13 so that we can listen to them discuss things. Cool? So that's the first dozen cues in the show. Again, going through and figuring out where they're moving on stage can be important. You may need to, because, for instance, they're in the bedroom and it's nighttime, it may be that it's backlight and side light may be a little brighter so you can see them, but the intensity of the blue light or the night sky would still be the dominant color in that bedroom. In the kitchen, because he's turned the actual practical light on, again, I would just keep that there. And then again, I would keep the bathroom light on because he turned it on, but he never turned it off. Now, the next cue would be when the boys, among the next cues, is when Ben shows up, which again, we're in dreamland, and the boys suddenly are outside the house. During that sequence, we can turn the light in the bathroom off, and we can turn the light in the practical light that's in the kitchen off. We can turn the practical light that's in the boys' bedroom upstairs off. And when we go back to those locations, you don't necessarily have to turn them back on. I know it's a lack of continuity, and someone might notice it, but for the most part, I think you could get away with those, especially when they go back into the kitchen will probably come back on, but not necessarily the light that's in the boys' room upstairs and the light that's in the bathroom off stage, yes? So again, that's the way you approach the script. Where are my light cues? In your head, what do I want my light cues to do? And then bring up the areas, yes? If the the kitchen is area E on our plot, if you remember that, that's the one you're gonna bring up. If the boys' bedroom upstairs is area H, that's the one you're gonna bring up. If the special is in Willie's bathroom, and again, the director going to see a rehearsal and seeing if the director put Willie's bathroom on one side or the other, that's where you learn which one is Willie's bathroom. Yes, now, that's just what it says in the script. If the director does not have Willie go to the bathroom, you eliminate that cue. That's what I mean by having a plan going in, and then as you watch the play in the rehearsal, it may change the implementation of what exactly the light cues are. Yeah, so pencil, 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 because things are going to change. Yes. Now, this is your best approach, and when you sit down with the director, I would say that he would either say, that sounds great, or he may say, ooh, we need another light cue here, or whatever he may need to do. Again, we talked about this when we talked about tech rehearsals, the difference between a motivated and an unmotivated light cue. A motivated light cue is when you have the lights to turn on and off, but somebody's actually done something on stage. The light that is in the refrigerator, I would just have that on, because sometimes actors just do things like open a refrigerator. And so if it's actually a part of a cue that I would have to turn on and off, then if he doesn't do it in the right place, the right order, then it may screw up my cueing. If he does it and the light's just on all the time, the thing about a refrigerator, when it's shut, who knows? The light could be on, the light could be off. So again, some things like that, those are just choices to make as you're figuring out the show. Constantly in the course of tech rehearsals, in the course of productions, look to see ways to improve the show. Can I add a light here? Can I add a moment here? Can I add a color to the background? Can I add a moon shape or some sort of anything I can do to make the reality, make the story easier to understand what's going on. Do I have too many lights on? Do I need to turn some lights off? Make sure you have a light board operator that understands how the board works. Sitting down with your light board operator and having them understand how to begin a show, how to end a show. I would always, at the beginning of the show, start your preset. At the end of every show, I would go and create a work light cue and then a blackout cue. Because at the end of every show, you have curtain call, and then you're gonna need to strike things from the show and reset it. So I'd always add a blackout cue at the end, a work light cue at the end, and then add a blackout cue after that so that everybody can leave. And when the light board operator comes in the next day, they just go from the last cue in the show, which is blackout, to the top of the show, which is cue 1, when they're ready to start the show. Yes. So that's a little trick I've learned over time. A couple things. One is sound can affect how fast your light cues go. The rhythm of the sound will often be, if you're just creating a show and you haven't heard the sound yet, a lot of times once you hear the sound, you'll know that you need to make an 8-second change as opposed to 12-second change, that sort of stuff. So depending upon what that flute sounds like, it may be that little purple light that I add comes up sort of quickly, or maybe that it fades very slowly. It depends on what the sound exactly of the cue is, yes? So lights can depend upon sound for their speed. Again, emotional content is the biggest thing. If when you're at the beginning and end of acts or scenes, you'll know when it's correct to do a blackout and when it's correct to do a fade. Yes, it's just something you feel over time. Here's a little video of a man who's working on a small theater production of Putnam County Spelling Bee, but you can see how he has to incorporate lights and sound and spotlight all in the same cueing sequence.
Welcome. We are at Blackfriars Theater, a small 126-seat theater in Rochester, New York, and we're taking the time to explain to you the operations of Cue Player Lighting and Cue Player Premium. Let's go up to the booth, where you'll notice we have no windows here, so we are limited on conversations with other people, and we normally run our shows with just one person, and that's why I wanted to highlight some of the things that we do here so that you can appreciate how this works. Here we have the lighting station. The theater here has about 110 conventional lights and then a handful of LEDs. The sound computer is here, and then we have the relatively new Behringer X32 for sound mixing, some battery chargers, the wireless microphones. Right now we have 20 that we can operate with, And then over at the end, final end of the booth is the follow spot and the follow spot monitor. If we go back to the lighting computer, we'll see the cue list for the current show. It's the Putnam County Spelling Bee, and we can scroll to the top of the cue list. And yes, indeed, there are quite a few cues. I think there's somewhat over 180 cues, lighting cues in this show, which is not unusual for us. We normally have somewhere around that number, depending on the show. As we can see over here, there are significantly fewer sound cues in this, it being a musical, so there's not too much in the way of effects or background music. We'll scan back here to the lighting computer, and we'll play the first cue by pressing the space bar, and you can see the channels begin to change, and hopefully in the background the lighting come up. As I said, the normal setup is to have the stage manager here in the middle with his or her book. On either side are the keyboards for sound and lighting. So he or she will sit here in the middle and press the space bar of one or the other, depending upon the cues that are coming up. No communications required, no extra people required. We can run through several of the cues here. We can notice the changes on the stage. This would be for the curtain speech, and we will leave it at Mrs. Pateri because we want to demonstrate something in a little bit. So now we move over here to the center. This little screen in the middle here is the infrared camera for blackout, so that the stage manager can see what's going on. Now we'll go over here to the sound computer and perhaps run a couple cues. This is, as I said, the cue list from Spelling Bee. It's fairly short. There is one cue here that we might want to run. Let's see if you can hear it.
Marigold Coney Bear. That's a really lovely sweater, Marigold.
And what we've done here is we've had 3 cues play. The first one starts that background strange music. The second one autoplays the actor's voice, and then finally we have a fade on that. The one for his voice is what we call a timeline cue, and we'll demonstrate that in just a moment with another cue list. We tell this cue to fire at 10 seconds into the previous cue. Let's go in and demonstrate one of the features of the communications between the two programs. We'll pick a cue list from an older show. This is from A Few Good Men, and you'll notice that there are 4 cues right after the opening cue that are a different color, and those are lighting cues. What will happen here, and what we can do quite easily, is to start the sound. We will hit the space bar here, and I'll show you both screens there. Okay, we have fired 2. All right, and you can see that all those cues were coordinated with a particular part of the sound. Those, again, were timeline cues. One thing I forgot to mention back here over on lighting, in conjunction with the follow spot, we can have follow spot prompts. We go over and you can see the blue screen over right underneath the follow spot, and we'll come back here to the cue list, and we can play after Barfy enters. We can have Barfy sit. It gets dark, and we have automatically played a follow spot cue for the upcoming cue. And we'll go over here, and you can see, if I expand it a little bit, that the prompt is olive door center. So here we don't need to really communicate a cue to the follow spot operator verbally, we can send him or her a message. Later on, we can do we can change the message for a different cue, different color if we need to, and now we have Rona at stage right doorway, or stairs, excuse me. One of the other features that, again, in terms of automatic control between the computers here at Blackfriars, is we can we said that we had the mixing board here. Now normally, like I say, for a regular drama show, we run with one operator, the stage manager, at the station here, pressing the space bar on either the lighting or sound. With musicals, of course, gets an added layer of complexity, and you probably will need someone on the mixing board writing the volumes of the wireless microphones. You can help that person out, however. We can do things like we can control the lighting of the mixing board via sound cues. Here what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the mutes, there we go, on several of the channels. So I've muted 2, 4, 6, and 8. Then if later on in the show, if I need to mute and change that, we can press the sound cue again, and now we've muted 1, 3, 5, or we've muted, excuse me, muted 2, 4, 6, and 8, and enabled 1, 3, 5, and 9. So here again, the stage manager sitting here does not really have to go over to the mixing board to do a cue. And that, for this particular session, concludes what we wanted to tell you about cue player lighting. Controlling this board here, I just want to mention that we do have it set up right now for 400 channels. We had those 110 conventionals and then a handful of specials and LEDs and whatever. And then the sound program, which in this case for A Few Good Men had considerably more cues than they did for the musical. So I hope you enjoyed this introduction to Cue Player Lighting, Cue Player Premium. Thank you.
All right, last thing before we go today, there's a way to use this button called blind. In the board, you have stage, which is the live action, sometimes it says live, but then you have a button next to it that's called blind. Blind is the ability to go into any cue and change something in the cue while you're in another cue. So let's say you're in cue 7 and you notice that this light is blown out, that's the Willie special or whatever it is, and you can look at your cue sheet and see when the next time that light is in a scene, and because you know the light is blown out, you can add an area light or at least some other light to come on to cover the fact that you know you've just lost the light in blind, and it'll record in blind. Yes, so again, just something, so you've heard of it. Again, it's something that will happen. Trust me, it happens, and it's a nice little trick to know if you wind up in that situation, but it doesn't happen often, but it is a nice thing to have. I think we're gonna add a little touring part of the video here, so here's a little bit about touring.